Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Lucenti. I'm an associate professor with Ohio State University Extension and the Ohio Sea Grant College program. And today we're going to talk about being a good board member for the Ohio Township Association. The workshop is designed to provide participants with an overview of the basic issues, expectations, and practices that are associated with being a good board member and effective public decision-making in any public office in Ohio. So in looking at public leadership and decision-making, the first thing we like to talk about is knowing your role. And by that I mean know and understand your responsibility of what you can and cannot do. So just because you're elected or appointed doesn't necessarily make you in charge of everything. Good, effective leaders know and understand their boundaries. Remember that as a public official, you are viewed as a leader. That means you've been given an inherent responsibility to be prepared to make decisions that are based on the future of the community. We always need to understand that quality leadership is never easy, it's very demanding, and can often be quite frustrating. When we talk about being a good board member, it's important to understand that public boards play a crucial role in decision-making and governance that shape the policies and serve their respective communities. Each board member significantly shares in the board's commitment to public service in the constituency in which they serve. In being prepared and planning ahead, being a good board member, it's critical to use your time efficiently. Meetings should not be too long, but they should be long enough to get what needs to be done accomplished. Don't rehash every little detail at every meeting. Not everything needs to be gone over again. You should include looking toward the future and long-range goals when you're planning ahead for meetings. Send out information packets prior to the board meeting for member review so that all can be prepared ahead of time. And make sure to include within that information packet the agenda, the minutes from previous meetings, a financial report, and then also to discuss pertinent community events, issues, or other information that may be covered during this meeting. I cannot stress enough the importance of having a solid agenda. When developing an agenda that focuses on the time, on the meeting's purpose, and outcomes is vital to a public meeting. In preparing the draft agenda, focus on the what, how, who, and when. The what of a meeting includes the issues to be discussed. The how includes the means or process through which the issues will be addressed. The who is the participants responsible for presenting or discussing the agenda item, and the when is where the issue or item is on the agenda and the amount of time each item will be allotted. It's also important is a specific beginning and ending time for meetings. We want to remember that meetings should not last forever and have respect for everyone's time involved. I have developed 9 simple rules for understanding the rules of engagement. So the rules of engagement on public sector boards in Ohio are generally guided by legal requirements, ethical standards, and established government principles. Here are some common guidelines. The first is a code of conduct. Have a code of conduct or ethics policy that outlines expected behavior and ethical standards for board members that includes the requirements for honesty, integrity, confidentiality, and avoiding conflicts of interest. The second is legal compliance. Board members must comply with all relevant laws, regulations, and policies that govern their public sector organization. The third rule of engagement is duty of loyalty. All board members owe a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of the township and the public that they serve at all times. The fourth rule is preparedness and active participation. Come to your meetings prepared. Review relevant materials and actively contribute to board discussions. For those of you who don't choose to do this, it's often commonly found that things are tabled and you can't advance decision-making and legislation. The fifth rule is respectful and constructive communication. So basically, be respectful, professional with communication with board members, staff, and stakeholders. Listen attentively. Consider diverse perspectives and engage in constructive dialogue to reach informed decisions. The sixth rule of engagement is confidentiality. You often have access to sensitive information that's related to township operations, employees, strategies, and stakeholders, so respect the privacy of such information and use it in the most constructive and, of course, legal ways. The seventh rule of engagement is the decision-making and consensus-building framework. While individual opinions and dissenting views can and will occur, board members are expected to support board decisions once they are made. The eighth rule is transparency and accountability. Public boards are accountable to the public and should promote operational transparency. Provide public access to meeting minutes and other relevant documents in accordance with Ohio's open meeting and public record laws. And finally, the ninth rule of engagement is continuous learning. It's important that board members are encouraged to engage in ongoing learning, professional development, and training opportunities to enhance your knowledge, much like what you're doing now. Next, we're talking about building trust with your board, another 8-step process. So the first, be transparent and open. Share information openly with other board members and the public. Ensure that your meetings and decision-making is transparent and accessible to all stakeholders. Provide opportunities to the public for input in board discussions and decision-making when appropriate. The second step is active listening and respectful communication. We have to understand that all kinds of people are different. Some people are more loud. Some people are more demure in how they view themselves and how they interact with the public. So it's important to listen and understand different perspectives and concerns. Encourage respectful and constructive dialogue within that framework. Value diverse opinions and viewpoints and foster an environment where everyone feels heard and respected. The third step is to build competence and expertise. This is to continuously develop individual and collective knowledge and skills that are relative to your board responsibilities. Next, demonstrate competence in understanding the issues at hand and making informed decisions. And again, refer to what I said back about doing the homework and having researched the subjects that you're debating and having legislative conversations about. Next is to seek professional development opportunities and stay updated on best practices in local governance. The fourth step is integrity and ethical conduct. Always act with integrity, honesty, and professionalism in all of your board activities. Adhere to the ethical standards and avoid conflicts of interest with your board members. And finally, hold each other accountable for upholding ethical conduct on the board. The fifth step is consensus building and collaboration. It's important to foster a collaborative culture by encouraging teamwork and consensus building among all of your board members. Value those diverse perspectives and work toward finding common ground and shared goals. And again, engage in constructive problem-solving and decision-making processes. The sixth step, accountability and follow-through. Take ownership of individual responsibilities and then deliver on your commitments. Also, hold yourself accountable for actions and decisions that are made as a board member. And then communicate the progress and outcomes transparently to the public. The seventh step is community engagement. Actively engage with the community, listen to their concerns, and represent their interests. After all, that's what you were elected to do. Attend community events, meetings, and public forums to connect with constituents. And very importantly in this next step is to build relationships and partnerships with community organizations, fostering trust through ongoing dialogue and collaboration. And the eighth step is to evaluate and improve. Always think about steps on how to evaluate how you are conducting the public's business, how you are interacting with your board members, and regularly taking a look at the board's performance and effectiveness in building trust. Seek feedback from community stakeholders and make adjustments accordingly. And then embrace a culture of continuous improvement, learning, and adaptability. So in building trust, it's important to remember that trust is built over time and through consistent actions and behaviors that demonstrate integrity, competence, and a genuine commitment to serving the public interest. By doing these things as a priority, respectful communication, collaboration, and accountability, public boards can establish and maintain trust with both their fellow board members and the communities that they serve. So as public officials, you are individuals that hold public office, and you've been given a public trust that demands the highest levels of ethical and moral conduct. Why is that? It's important to understand today's operating environment. If you remember anything, remember this. Perception is reality. You've all heard that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why we have the separations of power in government. So if you want to drive people crazy, they want to know why you need to go into a closed meeting or have a meeting behind closed doors. Public trust does not go with the turf. Rather, it's earned by one word and one action at a time. So as public officials, because you are under constant observation, we have identified 6 basic ethical principles that you should consider. The first principle is that a public official should never accept favors or benefits which might be construed by reasonable persons as influencing the performance of your governmental duties. The second principle is that you should make no private promises of any kind that are binding upon the duties of office, since as a public servant, you have no private word, which can be binding on public duty. The third principle, you should never engage in any business with the government, either directly or indirectly, which is inconsistent with the performance of government duties. The fourth principle is do not ever allow any actions to appear to the public that insider deal making is occurring. The fifth principle, never use any information gained confidentially in the performance of your duties as a means of making profit. And finally, the sixth principle is exposing through appropriate means corruption, misconduct, or neglect of duty. So now that we've identified some ethical guidelines, let's discuss conduct rules for public officials. So 6 conduct rules. Rule 1, and this is nothing more than you probably were taught when you were a child growing up by your parents by following the golden rule. The first rule is avoid, during public meetings and during the performance of your public duties, the use of abusive, threatening, or intimidating language or gestures. The second rule is to avoid a private lifestyle that casts public doubt upon your integrity and competence. And if you look at these couple of slides here, even though we like to joke around and have a little bit of fun, we realize that we're all humans, right? And we have lives outside of our offices that we hold. But it's important to project a positive image when you're out there in public, because that is how the public will largely shape their opinion of you. The third rule is that during public meetings, you should always work to create a positive environment in which citizens will feel comfortable. You see on the right, we've gone, a lot of times we were Zoom with COVID-related things. Most of us are now back to meeting face-to-face in public. So it's important upon you as public officials to make citizens feel welcome, explain the rules of the road, and let them know that they are acknowledged. The fourth rule, to maintain an attitude of courtesy and consideration toward everyone. Rule number 5 is honesty, integrity, and civility go a long way towards successful public service. Again, here you see a picture of descending chaos in council chambers and things like that. Unfortunately, everything like these things do happen in today's occurrence, even to the point where there's local law enforcement involved in attending these meetings. So it's important that we keep things civilized so that we're there to advance the business of the public. And finally, rule number 6, remember that a word that is once spoken, an action that is once taken, cannot be successfully erased from the minds of our public. As leaders in the public sectors, you are stewards of our community's futures. You are the people in charge now and doing the best you can for the future of the communities. So as a public official, there are 2 dimensions of decision-making. The first is by making the right decision by doing your homework and researching the issues, and then making the decision the right way through formalized procedure. Let's take a quick look at the 6 C's of decision-making. They are to construct, compile, collect, compare, consider, and to commit. So in constructing, we take a clear picture of precisely what must be decided. When we compile, we're looking for a list of requirements that must be met. When we collect, information on alternatives that meet the requirements. The next is to compare alternatives that meet those requirements. And then we need to consider the what might go wrong factor with each alternative. And then finally, commit to a decision and follow through with it. So thank you and good luck to all of you. Feel free to reach out with any comments or questions that you may have, and we look forward to you participating in the rest of OTA's offerings.